Welcome back to Montreal Today. Well, I can tell you that, of course, it is the granddaddy of the Canadian news magazines, and if you picked it up lately, it's changed. It's called, of course, Saturday Night. It's got a new look. It's got a new editor. 6 months ago, he joined, coming up here from the States. He's the Canadian, went down there, and he came back. Paul Tuff, good morning. Thanks for coming on. I should also say you're a McGill grad.
Yes.
Welcome back to Montreal.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Now, I'm wondering how much of the fact that you've lived in, like, Montreal, and we had the editor of Chatelaine when they had their makeover, and I said, you know, what is it about national magazines that seem to ignore the rest of the country? Well, you haven't done that. On the contrary, congratulations. Now, I would imagine some of the fact that you've lived here, and you've got a couple of articles here on Quebec, allowed you to sort of see the country for outside of Toronto, right?
I think that has something to do with it. But, I mean, growing up in Toronto, you really see that mindset. I certainly was exposed to it, of just thinking that the country, the world revolves around Toronto. And coming back to Canada to do this magazine, it is a national magazine. It always has been. It's something that I felt really strongly that we needed to do more of, get stories from all over the country.
But, you know, I picked up, well, it's funny, if you look at the cover, they're trapped 7 days and 7 nights inside the West Edmonton Mall. Now, that's not the kind of story you'd think on the cover of a Canadian news magazine. And how much of your American experience at Harper's, you were there for almost 10 years, and coming back, how old are you now?
I'm 31.
Yeah, he's 31. And he's running a national magazine here. How much of that experience has rubbed off in covering stuff like the West Edmonton Mall versus, let's say, you know, a Brian Mulroney scandal or something?
Well, I think it's just a different way of thinking about the country. Having spent time in the United States, I just get used to being in a country where people don't think the things where people think the things that are happening around them are interesting. And in Canada, I think that we have a tendency to look beyond our borders and think, well, if it's happening in Canada, it's not really an interesting story. I mean, this story about the Edmonton Mall is just a fantastic tale. It's just all sorts of strange things happened to the writer when he was there. In the same way, we have stories about things that are happening in Ottawa, in Newfoundland, all over the place, which are just great stories.
In your letters section, there are a couple of new sections here, but in the letters, you reproduce some letters that were written in Le Devoir after that scandalous review of Céline Dion's show at the Molson Centre, where they literally, the reviewer at the Le Devoir, if you remember it, related to her somewhat being trailer trash and that kind of stuff. And then you've got the reaction of the readers sort of disappointed in the review and thought Le Devoir was better. Why take these French letters and translate them?
Well, because I think that English readers across the country, especially outside of Quebec, don't really understand a lot about French-Canadian sentiment. And the fact that, I mean, it was about Céline Dion, but it felt like there was a lot else in those letters as well. There was this feeling that Le Devoir and Quebec media was being too provincial. That was the word that some of the French-Canadian writers, letter writers used. They wanted to celebrate Céline. And I thought it was an interesting little window into that world.
For what it's worth, you know, as I read the magazine, and I read a lot of Canadian news magazines as well as others, but specifically Canadians to sort of keep up on the Canadian news, and they don't seem to get Quebec. You get it.
Well, that's a big compliment from someone from Montreal. We're certainly trying to. It's hard. It is. I mean, it's what makes Canada great. I really think is Quebec. It changes it from being a country that sort of has one culture into something that has a lot of different cultures. And Montreal's always been my favorite city in the country, and so it's something that I want to keep trying to cover. It's hard, but we're trying. Are
you trying to bring down the average age of Saturday Night? I mean, you know, just over 30 you now. The magazine's becoming more hip.
It's not something we're trying to do. I mean, I hope people under 30 will read it. But no, I mean, one of the nice things about working at Saturday Night, especially compared to working for American magazines, is that it's a magazine that really appeals to the whole country. It's not like American magazines, sort of segmented and niche marketed to one particular demographic. So I want everyone to read it.
Is it tough to do that under Conrad Black?
Not at all, no.
He's not watching.
You never know, he's everywhere.
Yeah, no kidding.
But no,
he and Moses Neimer, they're everywhere.
I think that's what he wants the magazine to be as well. He doesn't want it to just be a Southern Ontario magazine or a young magazine or an old magazine. I mean, it goes to 400,000 readers across the country, which is a big audience. So it's got to have a broad appeal to appeal to them.
My fear was it was going to become too right-wing, too staunch, Ontario, whatever, and it's not.
Well, our politics, I think, are broad as well. What I want the magazine to do politically is sort of look at new ideas, look at new ways. There's a way that Canadian politics sometimes seems sort of hidebound into just a couple of different opinions. So I want to look for new ones.
Definitely succeeded. New look, Saturday Night Magazine. It's great. It's in the came in with the Gazette, I believe, on the weekend.
Right.
It's also available on newsstands if you didn't get it. There you have it. Got a plug in there. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome back. We'll take a commercial break. More of Montreal Today right after this.